to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Welcome in. The Fantasy Footballers. Mike, the Fantasy Hitman, Jason Moore. I'm Andy Holloway.
Hello.
Today we're going to set you free because this is about truth.
Oh,
And
okay.
the truth,
Okay,
I got you.
Yeah, you got
Yep.
you.
No,
I
you
got it.
Don't explain it.
Okay, I know I wasn't going to.
We are excited. It is the Truth Series, the beginning of the Truth Series, the truth of the quarterback position today on the show. That is the main event. Our first Truth episode ever, January 12th, 2016. And by the screenshot that I'm seeing, Jason was in Disneyland.
I was not a part of that episode, but I'm pretty sure during that episode I was the champ of the league, so I didn't care.
Oh,
about
is that what happened?
Yeah,
It was that long ago
I
that
took
you were
off.
the champ?
Well, not my last championship,
Oh.
but I was still champ then as well.
Did you look into this?
No,
Just
Please.
speculating? Yeah, okay.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Welcome in. Excited. Couple things here at the top before we jump into some news. I mean, I guess we haven't had the opportunity yet to.
We're good, man.
You got to go
Nope.
watch Sam Darnold in person.
We're good. Nothing to report.
Is he still holding the ball?
No, there is nothing to report on the Minnesota Vikings game.
People
It
don't know
is-
that you had a rooting interest, I think. You said you're
How
going.
do they not?
Well, I mean, not everybody knows that about you. It's
Yeah.
not at the forefront. We're Cardinal fans, but like
I wear a Minnesota Vikings hoodie on the show all the time.
you wore a Minnesota Twins shirt, I guess that's true.
and I like the Twins.
Yeah, but you are a Cardinals fan. I don't think
Yes.
most people, and if they're listening and they're not seeing your clothing, I think a lot of people did not know that the Vikings are like your number 2 team. You
Yes.
got family from Minnesota, and you do root for Minnesota. And so the game was here, and not only that, you're a Cardinals fan, so that means you're going to be anti-Rams in
Yeah.
division. So you went there to really root for your Minnesota
Oh.
Vikings.
I was going to say, I thought he meant ruin
That
his Minnesota
was
Vikings.
a bad time. Let me ask you, Mike, since you had
Oh, right.
boots on the ground,
Uh-huh.
the beautiful carriage of Sam Darnold, is it still a transportation device or is it now a pumpkin? Did it turn back?
I honestly, I would have to go and completely rewatch everything from the
You don't
all
wanna do that?
22, and because
He was criticizing the play call.
I felt like everything was being designed downfield. There were just too many plays where there was no real escape hatch for Sam Darnold. He probably should have ran more. Yes, he held the ball way too long on tons of them, but I felt like a lot of those sacks, we go look at the routes and no one is actually open. So he's praying for someone to break open, but no one ever does.
He probably would have helped himself in that game if he took off running a couple of times. Because
yes,
they
needed to change something.
if they were carrying guys down the field, and like you said, where it was drawn up, we've seen this in Arizona before. Sometimes there have not been opportunities to throw the football. There wasn't a release valve. He should have taken off and run a couple times to keep the defense honest. Horrible final 2 games of the year. Probably cost him $50 million.
Yeah, it's a really
A year. Like, not
Well,
just
I
50
know.
million, but yeah.
I mean, look,
I
he's in
think-
the Baker Geno category now.
yeah. I think he'll get a starting job, but it's
It's
wild.
3 years, $75 million, or
It's wild to go
$110 million.
from the locker room video that was circulating around, the whole team just showering him with champagne and professing their love for Sam Darnold. It was like, oh, I guess that answers the question, everybody. The Sam Darnold versus J.J. McCarthy. There's no way that this guy isn't back. And then the game to win the division and the first game of the playoffs, it was a complete disaster, and it changes everything.
If 2 weeks ago Sam Darnold broke his middle finger on his throwing hand, he would be so much better off. I mean,
he'd be the starter next year.
He would.
Locked
And so
in.
for J.J. McCarthy, I mean, he's got it seemed like he was supplanted and now is going to be needing to maybe find a new team, and now it looks like he's going to get a chance to be the future, most likely. Even if they sign Darnold and bring him back, it doesn't feel the same.
On the season, according to Next Gen Stats, on the season, not just in that game, he averaged 2.99 seconds in the pocket, which is the longest time in the pocket in the entire league and the longest since 2016. So the offensive line's performance, he didn't have an offensive line when he was in New York. That was part of the problem. You find a team that can scheme it or stop the offensive line doesn't perform as well. You saw what you saw with Darnold. Season over. And just like that, 14 wins. Goodbye.
Yeah, and that's the thing you have to remember, though. Sam Darnold and the Vikings won 14 games. I know the last 2 were a nuclear meltdown, but he won 14 games, and the 2 teams that he lost to at the very end of the season, those teams also beat him in the regular season. So is this just a Dan Campbell and Sean McVay, and they know how to attack this team the way that they're structured, because they looked. Sam Darnold wasn't great; he was missing throws, but they looked thoroughly outcoached in that playoff.
Maybe
game.
The pressure, Mike being there at the game.
The teams are doing that to me a lot lately, guys.
Yeah, you're not great for teams when you show up.
When I was leaving the stadium, I'm like, I think I might be done.
Yeah,
I might be done with live sports.
You are.
I'm just lighting money on fire to go home real sad.
I don't remember. I feel like you are like a 20% winning percentage.
For who you want to win.
Well, yeah.
For whomever you want to win.
Yes, correct.
So we'll keep that in mind. We do have an announcement. Jared Goff just popped on the screen. It's not related to Jared Goff, but he will be talked about on today's Truth episode. We have an announcement to make, though. We are hiring yet another position. Recently, we put the call out for the developer position. We are down to the finalists on that job. We are hiring a graphic designer and also somebody to join the team and support in some of our community areas. Primarily a graphic designer. That's the number one discipline here for this job. Couple things I want to let you know. You can go to thefantasyfootballers.com/careers to see the whole job posting. And number 2, it's not a remote position. You need to be in Phoenix. You need to be nearby. The job is in studio. It's a full-time position. We're hiring and adding to the team.
Yeah, this is basically, we're calling out to a national and really international audience here.
Yeah.
But we're just looking for the one that is here. That is
Canadians need not apply.
You've been in our backyard. You've been listening to the Ballers for a couple years, and you're an unbelievable graphic artist. We're not looking for a
believable one.
I know how to. Yeah, I could totally believe you could make that in Photoshop. No, I want to be like, what?
I can't believe it.
You didn't do that.
Thefantasyfootballers.com/careers. And we put the call out on the show because we want somebody that knows what we're about. And we've been doing this for a long time. So there you go. Did you want to add anything to that?
No, just be great. Be fantastic. When you go do the application, you'll have some things to make there so we can see your style. And, hopefully you are one of us and you're in our backyard, and it is a great work environment.
All right, let's jump into some news.
News and notes from around the league, presented by USAA Insurance.
David Montgomery says he's ready to go for the divisional round, practiced in full.
Crazy.
So, that's exciting. I honestly, I couldn't tell you how crazy it is or isn't, just on the basis of I feel like it's juxtaposed to our initial reaction, which was, he's just going to be gone for the year. But
I think
didn't have surgery, he's back. They've gone far enough.
He better not get hurt.
Right, I know. Seriously, if he re-aggravates that same injury, it'd be a lot of finger pointing. Yep. But Andy's kind of right in the sense that he's healthy. He's fine. He's able to play. So this isn't crazy news. What is so crazy about it is that I believe his first 2 doctors said,
yes,
no, you require surgery. And now he's playing later. So shame on someone. You know what I mean? If he's fine, those 2 doctors got it wrong.
Don't get your advice from surgery.com. They advise surgery on everything.
They got too much skin in the game.
Yeah. Big surgery coming after you.
I prefer groinindex.com. The Browns are promoting tight end coach Tommy Rees to offensive coordinator.
Okay.
This one's kind of exciting for me. We don't know much about him. He was the Alabama OC in 2023. He's a former Notre Dame quarterback, but he's a young up-and-comer who's kind of flown up, and everything that people talk about around him is that he's got this brilliant football mind. So getting rid of your OC and then immediately taking someone that you know in-house and promoting them, and especially, it's not like he was the quintessential next in line. Like, oh, we've got the guy in the wings. This was a tight end coach. It was just like that guy's got something special. So a little bit of hope there for the Browns who, need a quarterback, but I hopefully exciting.
Deontay Johnson is no longer a member of the Houston Texans.
Holy crap.
So we've got, the
3 teams.
Steelers, the Panthers, the Ravens, the Texans. Texans are still playing, by the way. They're still in the playoffs.
It's technically 4 rosters in a full calendar year because he was a part of the Steelers until March. And this is a team that really needs a receiver, and Deontay Johnson is not going to be a part of that because the whispers from the bushes were just him being very disappointed in his role after they won a playoff game. And he had just gotten there. It was like, this is so weird.
The Aaron Rodgers documentary where they kind of followed him around? I wish there had been cameras over the last year on Deontay Johnson because, it's one of those fool me once, or strike one, strike two. If every single team out there who is in desperate need for your services, they really need you, does not want you a part of the team at all, you got to look inward. This is a you problem, man.
I think that's it by way of news. That was today's news and notes presented by USAA Insurance. Learn more at usaa.com/insurance. Let's go ahead and get into it.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Oh, another year. Same graphics. We are looking at the top.
Did we mention we're hiring a graphics person?
Oh, that's
maybe some video work is just a bonus.
Top 10 quarterbacks from 2024. Looking at the truth. What is the truth? We're looking at the big picture for these players, right? Consistency. What did they actually bring to your team? Not just staying on the surface level of what their end-of-year finish was.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes, and this is a good time of year to evaluate so that we can go into the next season with the right mindset on all these players. We're going to go through all positions. We take a look at what is the truth of the position as a whole and then break it down per player because at the end of the year, you just look and you say, oh, this guy was, the quarterback 8. That's a pretty good finish. But did he actually help you in fantasy? Was he consistent? Was he inconsistent? Did he have these crazy bust games? And so now's the time to kind of refresh the mindset and make sure that we have a true vision going forward. Now, I will say this. It's different every year. But this year, the main top quarterbacks, they bounced back a little bit more than in recent seasons. So this was a better one for the truth being closer to what you imagine.
Or what you might have hoped for if you drafted certain players. This year, as you said, big rebound in terms of injury problems, right? Like last year you had Burrow, Herbert, Watson, Rodgers, Richardson, Cousins, tons of injuries. Yeah, Fields missed 4 games last year. This year they stayed much healthier than in 2023, the quarterback position as a whole. They tied for the highest completion percentage of all time at the position. They had the highest touchdown rate, which is the percentage of touchdowns per throw, per pass attempt. It was the highest since 2020. The fewest interceptions and lowest interception rate over the last 15 years. That's cool. And the most quarterback rushing attempts and rushing yards.
That one makes sense.
Thank you, Jayden Daniels. Welcome to the party.
And just league is changing.
So, if you want a refresher on how these guys were drafted before we get into the most consistent quarterbacks, Josh Allen was the highest off the board as a late second-round draft pick. Jalen Hurts in the middle of the third. Mahomes was the middle of the third pick, late third, really. Lamar was a fourth-round pick. And just saying these out loud, refreshing, walking through them,
Next
some of these are going to hurt.
Yeah, they're not so good.
The back-to-back 5th-round picks, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson.
Whoops.
And just throw Kyler in there because all three of those under.
Wow, that Kyler wasn't as devastating as Stroud and Richardson.
But under ADP. And so Stroud, Richardson, Murray, and then Burrow was great in the 6th round. And then Jordan Love in the 7th also underperformed relative to ADP. Your big injury of the year was Dak. He was in the 7th, and then Purdy and Daniels. So we'll be talking about them. Jason, in terms of the weeks covered, the data we're looking at, this is weeks 1 through 17, right? Not looking at week 18.
So we decided this year, it's the first time we've done this, because a lot of times we've cherry-picked. We've removed some people who, the Josh Allen goes in, takes a knee.
Cherry-picked relevant weeks.
Right, exactly. So our fantasy season is weeks 1 through 17. A lot of times these teams, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Bills, really important teams, the Eagles, we oftentimes see the week 18 irrelevancy for a lot of the top players. So we just decided, let's look at the actual fantasy football season. Weeks 1 through 17, get a lay of the land picture there. I think it's a little bit more clear, and it's kind of intellectually more honest with the data. We're chopping off week 18, just looking at the full fantasy football season.
And so one of the things we do is we break down the season for each quarterback into 3 categories. Great games, and we classify those as more than 26 fantasy points, the upper echelon. This is 4-point per passing touchdown, by the way. Good games, so 21 or more points, or games that we define as bust games, so that's 15 or fewer. So yes, that does mean that there's a middle there's a space between them, a mess between them. Between 15 and 21, so that's why you're going to see percentages not add up to 100 total. But Lamar Jackson comes in at number 1. This was the 4th quarterback off the board, late 3rd round, number 1 in consistency by those metrics, number 1 in the first half of the season, number 1 in the second half of the season, 38% great games, 81% good games, 21 or more, and just 6%, so probably one game, right? One bust game, week 11 against Pittsburgh. So that is outrageous. 81% is tied for the 3rd highest among all quarterbacks since 2017. So since we've been doing this, he was so consistent. Yeah, I mean, he was the most consistent fantasy quarterback in the history of the NFL. Yeah, 16 games in the top 12.
He really was. The only season that might be as good as this season going back is actually Lamar Jackson's previous great season.
2019?
Yeah, he played 2 fewer games, didn't score as many fantasy points because he played 2 fewer games. The season was 1 game, shorter, and then they rested him in the last week, but he was 27 fantasy points per game that time. But Lamar Jackson this year was perfection. I mean, if you had him, you got far. You were probably in your championship, or at least thought you might get there. And what's crazy is I don't remember, maybe Josh Allen did this last year. I don't think so, but it's very rare for a consistent player to be the number 1 most consistent in the first half and the number 1 most consistent in the second half. There was no letdown, drop-off, improvement, no change. He was just great all season. And what was insane about that, maybe it's Derrick Henry. Maybe Derrick Henry opened things up for him, but he didn't really have the weapons like some of these top guys, him and Josh Allen both, and they're both in the MVP race. It wasn't like Zay Flowers just dominated or Mark Andrews dominated.
Well, I mean, it's weird because I was going to bring this up. He added Derrick Henry, who dominated. He was this consistent. That is not going to be the story of Jalen Hurts when we get there. Jalen Hurts was drafted as the quarterback 2 off the board. He did not finish to his expectation. He had Saquon. He does have weapons, right? A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith.
Yeah.
And yet his situation, he was pushed to the periphery, whereas, Allen and Lamar are the top 2 on our board.
When you have, it's his second year in the Monken system. We've kind of been talking about this recently of it having all these OCs change all over the place. It sucks because it takes a while to get an offense truly out there and really fully running where people aren't thinking about things. They know it. I mean, think about anything that you've done for a long time. And when you started doing it, you have to consciously think about what the steps are. And then eventually you get to muscle memory where you can just do it. You don't even think about it. You just go out there and do it. And Lamar's passing, his numbers as a passer, he still would have been a top 5, top 3 fantasy quarterback, 4,040. And then he just gave you 900 rushing yards. So the addition of Derrick Henry to me, huge deal, of course. But adding Derrick Henry doesn't turn you into a 4,000-yard with 40-plus touchdowns, through the air. That it's not a that's
You're saying it was Lamar.
Yeah, this was Lamar, full level up in this system. We're hearing I guess I haven't heard rumors recently of Monken getting some head coaching interviews because if he left, I think it would be very upsetting next year. Lamar will be great for fantasy.
It was Greg Roman in 2019,
but we've seen him be hot and cold when he has to keep changing all systems.
And that was Greg Roman's first season in Baltimore.
Yeah, Look, number 1 in fantasy points per dropback, number 1 in passer rating, number 1 in yards per attempt, number 1 in passer rating versus zone. And a lot of it is that line between before he takes off and the elusiveness of getting outside the pocket, and players are just going to come open as the play breaks down. He's so good at that. He's in control at all times.
Will he be the first quarterback drafted?
Probably. I mean, between him and Allen,
and Josh Allen.
Him and Josh Allen will be really close. But Jason and I were so excited for Monken and the Ravens offense last year. This is what we were hoping for. It was a year too early.
I will add to this, and this is probably the final thing we'll say here because we don't need to talk about Lamar forever. Yeah. He's really good. He's going to be drafted high. He's going to be good. But in that 2019 season, he had a 9% touchdown rate. We talk about this a lot of times with these players.
Which is outlandishly high.
It's outlandishly high. And I'm going to read you his normal touchdown rate from that point on because that was really his first season. Then it dropped after that unbelievable fantasy season to 6.9, pretty nice, 4.2, 5.2, 5.3, and then this year back up to 8.6. So it's not the norm. The touchdowns aren't as sticky and predictable when you're 40. I would be very surprised if he back-to-backs 40 touchdowns.
No, I think that's fair. We'll get into Josh Allen in a minute. We'll take a quick break, and we'll hit the number 2 quarterback on our list. All right, fellow 28-year-old Josh Allen, the other part of the MVP race, came in at number 2. First half consistency score of 6, second half of 3. Ends the year as the second most consistent quarterback. It was red light, green light to start the year. We all remember number 1 quarterback against Arizona in week 1, all the way down to 28 in week 2, then back up to number 2 in week 3, then down to 28 against Baltimore in week 4. And we didn't know what the new normal was going to be for Josh Allen without Stephon Diggs, without Gabe Davis, with this system.
Without Amari Cooper yet.
Right. Well, he made such a difference. Great games, 31% of the time, so just below where Lamar was. Good games, 63%, but he did bust 25% of the time. 3 of those games in the bust category came in the first 5 weeks. So you could also look at, hey, he's adjusting to new personnel, kind of found what they were looking for from week 9 on, really, and was the number 3 most consistent in the second half. Unbelievably high numbers, big numbers, against bottom 16 defenses. So when you look at fantasy points per game, 19.39 against top 16 defenses, and that was a good sample size. 11 times they played those defenses. In the 6 games where he should, like when you would predictably come in here and say, oh, this is going to be good for Josh Allen, it was so good. 33.5 fantasy points in those games. So the big problem with Buffalo to me when we were going through the season was a lot of running game, a lot of total, not a lot of plays in the game, slower offense. Still kind of worked out for Josh Allen, just not the way we had seen it in the past.
Yeah, it's interesting of the Ravens. Just real quick of it might be just an entire team regression because you have Lamar's numbers and then you have Derrick Henry who's almost at 2,000 rushing yards, double-digit touchdowns. I mean, Josh Allen still James Cook tied the Bills' running back rushing touchdown record. He tied O.J. Simpson. So it's not like guys weren't taking away points from Josh Allen. You hate to see that split being that drastic over the course of a season, but that's not going to freak me out with we have enough sample of Josh Allen.
No, and I also think that it's crazy with having as good a year as he had to think he could still get better next year. When I look at these two guys, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and I think who gets better next season, I think there's more pathway there for Josh Allen. His rushing touchdowns are more secured because they do the tush-push type of move. They score. He scores more around the goal line. Lamar's tend to be further out. But you look at this. This is the first time over the last 8 years that a top 5 quarterback, not just like the quarterback 2, but even just a top 5, has failed to have a top 30 wide receiver or a top 10 tight end. He didn't have great weapons. Like, I don't think Lamar has excellent weapons, but his are better. Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers are better than the hodgepodge that Josh Allen was working with.
This was very much the Brady-type year for Josh Allen, where Brady would have productive years, and sometimes you couldn't point to – he didn't always have Randy Moss, right? Right. It was Deion Branch and other players. The number that you looked at last offseason and said, hey, he scored 15 times on the ground last year. He's not going to do that again. Well, he scored 12 times on the ground. How many touchdowns did he throw? When he was number 1 last year, he threw 29. This year he threw 28. Touchdown rate, much more reasonable. He's had 2 years where he was higher than the 5.8% this year. In the past, this is the first time in 5 years that he hasn't thrown for 4,000 yards. He threw for 600 fewer yards this year. And I think that was noticed in fantasy, right? Like, I think you did feel it, but he ended up not being that bust potential guy that let you down. He actually had back-to-back number 1 finishes right going into the fantasy playoffs. During the fantasy playoffs, he had a down week against New England. That one hurt. But, again, very, very consistent Josh Allen.
Yeah, I mean, he's also going to break the all-time rushing touchdown number for quarterbacks, so he could do it next year.
Joe Burrow comes in at 3. Yes, Joe Burrow at 3. He was drafted as the quarterback 7 in the 6th round, 31% great games, 50% good, 19% busts. That is fewer than Josh Allen in the bust category. Consistency-wise, welcome to the Joe Burrow experience.
Start slow.
This guy.
First half of the year, number 12, including number 29 overall finish in week 1 against New England that made everybody go, what's going on? Number 2 in consistency in the second half of the season. An absolute machine.
His splits are even against great defenses and bad defenses. His home road splits are within 2.8 points. I mean, so it was very even-keeled here.
Everyone could score on the Bengals, Mike.
Yeah,
the teams with bad defenses and the teams with good defense, they could all score on the Bengals.
And then help.
Burrow's like, okay, I got to keep doing this. I mean, it really was nice. Obviously, they made a defensive coordinator change, and I think that if their defense got better, they would like Joe Burrow to not have to score 40 every game in order to get a W, but he can.
It's good for fantasy.
Oh, it's so good for fantasy.
4,900 yards, 43 passing touchdowns, and 9 interceptions.
I'm hoping
that's an MVP year if you if they
make
just win
the
playoffs.
Yeah, I'm hoping they don't replace the DC with anyone. They just leave that vacant.
Nobody.
No, but focus on the offense.
Like the defense shows up for practice and they're just looking around.
Yeah, it's self-taught.
Oh, self-managed.
I mean? Like, yeah. You guys go on that field, figure some stuff out.
Man, who's going to be the first one with an AI defensive coordinator? But like in one of those, Tesla robots comes out there.
Oh, so it's actually
but it's shaped like Rex Ryan.
Oh, he's a big boy.
It's a big robot.
Yeah, he's got to be scary.
Super white teeth. Loves feet.
Cover to bleep blop.
Cover to bleep blop.
Okay, Joe Burrow. What else is there to say?
The
pocket passer.
Yeah, he is a pocket passer. So I mean me, really hope that T. Higgins is back for Joe Burrow. If you like fantasy points from Joe Burrow, you should also hope that T. Higgins is back because it's Joe Burrow with some other options of Jamar Chase can still be great. But for a pocket passer to hit this type of a ceiling, I mean, to do it without a second really good weapon on the field is your probability goes way down.
This was the exact same points per game he had in 2022. Last year, 10 games, 14.7 points per game. Not a good pick. Not a good fantasy pick. And then this year, right back to form.
Yeah, I mean, last year he was dealing with the injury off of camp, started slow. And then
he starts with his bull crap at the beginning of the year, which he always does, and then
didn't get to settle in. Got hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, I mean, career high.
his quarterback rating was down and everything, too.
Yes. But this season, career high in completion percentage, career high in passing yardage, career high in touchdowns. Thankfully, his touchdown rate, he was 6.6. That's not an outlandish number. He's been 6.5 in the past before. When you look at these pocket passers, and this was our argument. Like, I know a lot of Foot Clan had Joe Burrow because we were talking about how some of these guys like Jordan Love and C.J. Stroud, you were hoping that they could develop into what we've already seen several seasons of from Joe Burrow while Joe Burrow was going rounds later. So the nice thing for drafting Joe Burrow is he's done this several times. Last season was a down season for him. He was injured. It was bad, both on a per-game basis, and obviously he missed, almost half the season. But now, over the last 4 seasons, 3 of the last 4 seasons, he's been really, really good.
You want to hear something crazy? 652 pass attempts compared to Josh Allen's 483. 169 more pass attempts for Joe Burrow than Josh Allen. You can imagine if Allen got to throw the ball that much, the kinds of numbers.
It's 102 carries for Josh Allen.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to be the variable for Joe Burrow, though, is that you're going to get the great games, and then you're going to run the risk of not going 43-9 every year because the greats didn't do it, right? No, Brady didn't do it. Stafford never did it.
Joe Burrow next year is probably going to be a very sketchy ADP pick.
I just don't know if he'll go – I don't think he'll go proportionate to where he's finishing here. I think –
no, he will jump. He'll replace Stroud. He'll be in like the 5th.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think that
he'll
will
still
be
go
the
behind
case. Obviously, Daniels will go ahead of him,
yes.
and Josh Allen and Lamar will go ahead of him.
And Hurts.
Yeah.
Hurts will go ahead of him.
Number 4, guys. Number 4. The truth of the quarterback position. It's Jayden Daniels.
Wild.
Who was number 4 in the first half in consistency, number 4 in the second half in consistency, finishing as our 3rd most consistent player. That's wild. I mean, 38% great games.
Well, when you set the all-time rushing record for a rookie quarterback, that's going to be very helpful for fantasy football.
891 yards, 6 rushing touchdowns, 63% good games, 25% bust games. Better numbers against better defenses. 5 fantasy points more per game against upper echelon opponents.
Right. Well, it was by the end of the year. That was only 3 games, and
they didn't play a lot of great defenses.
So I mean, that's more interesting of the success of Washington
for next year is the fact that they'll get a worse schedule.
Like, man, you might have lucked out here on some teams' defenses turning sour.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing is that on a player level, and I don't know, maybe going into year 2, they'll try to rein this back, which could be bad for fantasy. But it wasn't just that he had a lot of rushing attempts. It was that those rushing attempts came as scrambles. This was a play breaks down, he starts running, he takes off. He had 75 total scrambles. That is the most all time since at least since that's been tracked since 2016 from PFF. And a scramble is worth 2 times more fantasy points than designed runs. Between
scrambles are the good stuff.
Yeah, that's where it's
ham, eggs, cheese.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
put a little onion in it.
Oh baby,
that's how I started my morning. This
you had a scramble this morning.
A little Scramby.
So at home.
At home.
Home Scramby.
Scramby.
Did you go egg whites or full egg?
Full egg. I want that yolk, bro.
Scramby Daniels.
Scramby Daniels.
Oh no.
No, I mean, I want Scramby Daniels. Oh. No,
I don't know about that.
I don't know about that one.
Maybe that's a pass.
Yeah, let's keep that.
Let's keep the scrambles at Denny's.
Let's put that on the heater over there, and then turn the heat lamp
off. We'll come back to it. We'll
revisit. probably not going to stick
But
with that one.
he likes to scramble, huh?
Yes, he does. And so hopefully,
Scramby.
hopefully next year he keeps up with that, because that's a player trait. And I don't want the team to say, we're going to try to tell him to stop doing it. Don't stop. Don't turn into Kyler Murray.
And I was going to say, for fear of walking down the scramble road again, he's one of the most, he was smart for the most part. Yeah. Not every play, but a lot of his scrambles.
Unlike what you saw in college.
Oh, man.
He was a lot smarter.
That was
his college tape.
I know people.
He did take some hits.
People had other, I have real concerns, big questions about Jayden Daniels. Everything was the hits of him getting absolutely crushed in college all the time, seemingly unable to find the final defender who's going to take him out. But, yeah, it was much better.
All right, the number 5 fantasy quarterback was Baker Mayfield, who did finish at number 5 in consistency. Number 2 in the first half, number 11 in the second half. Probably deserved to take home some footies just because he was so surprisingly good. 31% great games, 56% good, 19% bust. That is a low number. If you played him every week, right, you're looking – we always talk about streaming the quarterback position, which means starting different quarterbacks in different matchups if you don't have a guy that you can start every week. I'm sure that during the first 6 weeks of the season, Baker still felt like 100% a streaming quarterback where the shoe was going to drop. Then week 6, number 1 overall. Week 7, number 2. Now you believe. Week 8, number 5 overall. Goodbye, Chris Godwin.
No, not just Chris Godwin. Weeks 9 and 10, 2 of his 4 worst weeks was goodbye Mike Evans. So, I mean, this is where he had no Mike Evans, no Chris Godwin, and was average for those couple of weeks. Every game that he had Mike Evans, I mean, his consistency was great. His touchdowns, I mean, he threw north of 40, right? I don't have his numbers in
41
his touchdowns.
they're right there.
I mean, that's insane. Now, I imagine that his
16 picks.
His touchdown rate is one of those things that's going to regress. I'm not going to draft Baker to repeat what he did this year. Bucky will get more involved in the running game starting next season, but this is a player that prior to this season was a career 4.6% touchdown thrower, and he's pretty consistent with that, and it skyrocketed to 7.2. So when they got around the goal line, he was able to throw touchdowns. Jalen McMillions at the end of the year was a touchdown machine, and those things really helped take Baker to become an elite fantasy asset this year. But we have enough seasons of his data where it's not just the truth of this year, but the truth of this human and this player. I don't think he's as good for fantasy as he was this year. 9
times this year in the top 10 at the position, 1 time last year. And if you remember, just so this is the truth, right? This is kind of a little bit of a reflection of what the thinking was. The great fear was Dave Canales' departure.
Yep.
Now you've got Liam Cohen getting head coaching job offers
to Jacksonville.
And so you looked at that and you say, hey, what did I like about Tampa coming into the season? They brought back the same offensive talent, right? Like they brought Baker back, committed to him. Evans was back. Godwin was back. Rashad White was there. Like there was a lot of consistency. The offensive coordinator didn't it changed, but we saw that Baker could execute in a different offense. And gosh, that guy's had. I mean, how many offenses has Baker gone through at this point?
Sure.
It's funny to think about Baker because if you go back to he's in Carolina, right? They let him and Darnold go. His career was made by that one unbelievable drive for the Rams.
Yes.
Where he shows up off of the street, leads them down the field, makes every throw, and all of a sudden it's renewed in people's minds that he could be a quarterback. And I remember when Tampa signed him, I was like, oh, well, what? Like, this doesn't feel like your future.
He definitely feels like their future now. And the fact that he is the face of a franchise again, kind of having gone through what he went through, I could see him elevating his game over his career averages for sure. Going forward, just saying, like, I now have a support system, a team, a well-run organization around him, so he can certainly succeed. I don't think it'll be to the degree of 40 passing touchdowns ever again in his career, but he is a good quarterback. And the rushing...
He's not that different than what Burrow did this year.
He's just not that different than Burrow. Is what we hope sticks, because you look at the last several years, he came from college, he was a mobile quarterback. He ran a lot, But his whole career is 131 rushing yards, 141, 165, 134, 163. 378 rushing yards? I mean, if you do that, that's a baseline where you don't need to throw 40 touchdowns again next year.
You remember before he became the quarterback for Tampa, it was Kyle Trask talk. People thought Trask could be the starter.
The good old days.
I wonder who would talk about Kyle Trask like that.
Yeah. I don't know who would.
Jason.
Weirdos.
And his weird love for Kyle Trask.
I like this tape.
That it does give me an idea of, because we're all, we're always trying to figure out, is there what you should do for the footies. We need a footy for like the dog of the year.
Oh, who's on that X-ray?
Yeah,
who's got that dog?
Who's got multiple pit bulls inside?
Now, is that a fantasy corollary stat? That's the hard part. Who's got the dog in them?
We will decide.
That's
you'll
film.
know.
We'll know.
That's a film study.
Yeah. Watch Baker this year.
Award.
The dog.
No, what the Scramby of the year?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, he's
like a Denver on.
I'm not taking away from Daniels, but like when you watch Baker play, this is a man.
Multiple plays where people are taking him down on a sack.
Bosa?
He's stiff arming him, dragging him for yards.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That wasn't athleticism. That was dog.
It's a new stat in the UDK.
We're adding the dog factor. Means nothing for fantasy.
He's got 4 woofs. You know what I mean?
I knew that was coming. Baker at 5 is wild,
a couple
though. Look,
bow-wows.
I had Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield. Like, I had gone from Josh Allen in Dynasty to Kyler, I thought. No, I went from Josh Allen to Baker.
Yeah.
It's just weird how things change. Speaking of changing, Jalen Hurts comes in at 6, drafted as the QB2. Was he a bust? No. He's not a bust, but he was not the player you drafted in the 3rd round. He wasn't. He didn't deliver on that for your team. Number 3 in consistency in the first half. The second half killed you. Number 6 in consistency, but he had a big stretch of games, week 11 through 16. Where didn't play in week 17, your championship week. Week 16 was 33rd, got hurt, got the, not his fault.
But that is scored in this.
Yeah,
so.
It is scored. And then he had some mediocre weeks earlier. 27% great, 53% good, 13% bust. So, yeah, he never hurt you. I mean, I guess that's the question.
Beat up bad teams.
I won't declare it. Yeah, he was way better against bad teams. I won't declare that it's a bust, but do you think that he was worth the pick?
I think he was probably worth the pick. He was a very consistent part of your
the middle of the season was like that was a run where you won 4 games in a row because of Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, and if you obviously it's cherry picking. He hurt a lot of people in the playoffs when this was like probably the biggest injury of the season from an individual game standpoint. In the playoffs, right in the beginning of the game, plays 16% of snaps, and he goes out. And that was devastating for fantasy. But if you remove that, because we're talking about what's the truth of the player, when he played a full game, which is the only thing you can really rely on, you're never going to take prescriptive action based on a player missing a game early, unless it's T. Higgins, and you go, what's going to happen again? This guy was the 3rd in consistency. He was the 4th in consistency, even in the second half. If you remove that game, they weren't all massive bangers, but he never let you down.
Here's the change of value proposition, though, is that this will be Saquon's team again. And you went from 3,800 passing yards to 2,900, right? You're under 3,000. So you're now talking about 1,600 yards to 1,800 yards fewer than the top passers. He went from 23 touchdowns to 18. He's
15 games, though. Basically 14 games.
He scored 14 times on the ground. 4th consecutive year with double digits on the ground. But we saw at the end of 23 and during some of this season, like it did not feel like Jalen Hurts was the player that was going to take the game over. It felt like Saquon Barkley might take the game over.
Fair.
He had a weird strategy this year, Hurts did. It was called not throwing it to A.J. Brown.
Yeah,
we had to change our view on Brown during the year.
If we're looking at the Eagles are happy to, previous seasons, even last season, their defense was terrible. Their secondary was one you targeted. They go out and they draft 2 rookies. They hit on both of them. Jalen Carter, was way better this season, just grew even more into his man body. And the Philadelphia Eagles defense has been awesome. So the second half of a lot of these games, you have games where Jalen Hurts is finishing with how many passing attempts? Just, I'm looking at the game log here, and holy moly, completions, like hitting 20 completions from the bye week. They had a week 5 bye week. Okay, super early in the season. He only hit 20 completions once because they didn't need him to. They won all those games. So this is kind of a team makeup to say, kind of to speak what you're talking about, Andy. This is – they're not going to need to air it out. He's probably not going to, throw for 4,000 yards with this type of a defense and with Saquon on the roster.
We would take 3,000.
Yeah, I mean, he would have crossed 3,000 if he,
300 fewer passing attempts than Joe Burrow.
Yeah, this is the issue.
That's wild.
The rushing, unless the tush push goes away, which I think it won't. I mean, that's kind of been tried and died. I would say that it's just such a guarantee that he gets 10-plus rushing touchdowns.
Is that fun to not – like Burrow is fun, right? Burrow is fun to have on your team. He throws the ball so much. The game is just in his hands. Is it as fun right now? Because Hurts with the passing numbers he'd be the worst. It would not be good. But because of the rushing totals, he just kind of figures out a way to piece the game together. Is that as fun of an experience?
Is it as fun? No, definitely not. But it
will be Daniels or Hurts next year for you.
Oh, Daniels. I would much rather have
Will it be Burrow or Hurts? No draft pick not considered.
Yeah, it's tough because
where's Higgins?
On the team.
Yeah,
I'll probably go Hurts.
It's more fun to have Burrow, but having a quarterback where if they get down to the 1 yard line, you're like, hey, that's pretty fun. It's like a free bingo square.
That would be fun. I've never had that. All right, we'll take a break. We've got 4 more guys. Jared Goff.
Introducing.
He was a 10th round pick. He's not drafted in a lot of leagues. Consistency rank of 7. First half 11, second half 7. I don't know what his fantasy story really is. Let's figure this out because 19% great games, 44% good, 38% busts, yet throws for 4,600 yards, 37 touchdowns. Doesn't run. No rushing touchdowns. Gave you these outstanding, insane weeks, but also busted 38% of the time. Like this is, to me, I will clap.
Oh,
I'll clap for Jared Goff.
It's like a golf
I'll
clap.
give a golf clap to Jared Goff because you're a great NFL quarterback, but I don't want that experience. This is not like what I want on my fantasy team.
Jared Goff's a QB2 streamer.
That finished at 7.
Yeah.
That's
He's the streamer who can have gigantic games. Like when you're desperately looking at the waiver wire and you're like, oh, this guy has a good matchup. I hope I get 200 to 250 and hopefully we get 2 touchdowns. Like when you stream Jared Goff in the right situation, 4 touchdowns is not impossible.
Yeah,
they're such a weird offense because they're insanely overpowered, but frequently, I mean, until Montgomery got hurt, it was like you have one David Montgomery touchdown per week that Jared Goff is not allowed to throw.
It was helpful down the stretch, for fantasy purposes, all the injuries that amassed on the Detroit Lions. Because to start the year, the Lions their defense was outstanding. You couldn't run on them, and it looked like you finally couldn't really throw easily on them. And so then their running game could take over, although they didn't always. Sometimes they would continue passing. But towards the end of the year, weeks 14, 15, 16, 17, he had to air it out. You lost David Montgomery.
And guess who got hurt at the beginning of week 15?
It was a nice combination. But this is, you talk about a pocket passer like Baker has been a pocket passer. Burrow is a pocket passer. No, this is a he averages 3 rushing yards a game. He had 5 games where he finished with negative rushing yards. He ain't moving.
Well, I don't like a fantasy situation where if the team's plan went the way they wanted it to go, your player would not score a lot of fantasy points.
I agree completely.
And that's where, it's like Jalen Hurts is not that, right? Not quite. But it was more of that this year when the identity became someone else. We didn't see that with Lamar. But with Goff specifically, if they could run it on every down and play defense, that's what they would do. This is the first time that we've had 4,600 yards, 35 touchdowns, and a team with 14 wins where the guy doesn't win the MVP. I mean, Marino and Warner and Brady and Rodgers.
One Mahomes year,
and then
where he didn't get it.
And then Goff this year won't win it.
No, he will not.
But
I mean, like basically, if Allen and Lamar hadn't broken everything, like Jared Goff probably wins the MVP.
Yeah, the home road splits, because we like to mention it with the Dominator. He was only 3 points better at home. Okay. That's not domination.
No, that's more balanced. And then Jared Goff next year could potentially have a Ben Johnson problem.
I think he's gone for sure.
Of their OC, where as of this recording, because the Ben Johnson news could leak probably whenever. But it might have to wait till after the Super Bowl again, but we're just not sure. But I'm with Andy. I think Ben Johnson will take one of the jobs this year.
Seems like Las Vegas, too.
And then it will, at least, the rumor mill is heating up for that. And what is this offense? I know they got killer pieces that have played together for years now, but it'll be a big change.
It will worry me a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, Ben Johnson is my favorite coordinator. If I were hiring a head coach for my team, he was the one that I would want because he has Jared Goff. He's not playing with a Joe Burrow or a Patrick Mahomes, and you just keep recycling.
Goff was traded away to the Lions, so they would eat his contract, and then he would be a bridge quarterback until they found their real quarterback, and then their success turned that upside down.
I don't want to take anything away from Goff, who's played excellent ball, but it's been a both situation. I don't think Goff single-handedly elevated Ben Johnson to become a star name as a coordinator. I think they both worked really well together. So when he leaves next year, it will be it'll be a big wild card to see how they progress. And this is a player, like I said, because he's so pocket passer. This is the best year of his career. I think he had 1 year kind of like this with the Rams in a yesteryear, but he threw 37 touchdowns and played pretty perfect ball, and he was okay for fantasy. He was good for fantasy, but he wasn't great. This wasn't a player that you were super excited about. So I'm not sure how in I will be on Goff next year.
I believe Mike uttered something about bridge quarterbacks. So let's get to number 8. Sam Darnold. 14 inconsistency in the first half, 9 in the second half, ends at number 10 in consistency. So a little less consistent ranking-wise than his fantasy finish. Only 6% great games. So if you caught lightning in a bottle in week 2 or 14, congrats.
I mean, a lot of good games.
Yeah, 44% good, 25% bust, but it wasn't the upper echelon performer was the point. Like he didn't have a lot of those week-winning performances, which is fine. I mean, he still had an amazing year for what we were expecting out of Sam Darnold. We talked about him a lot at the top, so we don't have to linger very long. But 33 passing touchdowns, so that was a career high. He was like a relevant fantasy streamer, which was cool.
He looked good this season. The truth about Darnold is that he can play when he's got great weapons and a good coach. He is also shakeable. He is shakeable. Yeah, I mean, he was, this is the player who sadly, famously said he's seeing ghosts. He admitted that, when he was a Jet. And I
can't believe anyone would ever wear a microphone ever after that moment. Like,
right.
he was mic'd up, and this thing goes out and gets leaked.
We all think we would be so smart, and we would be the worst.
Oh, we would be the worst.
If we had microphones on,
I wouldn't even play the football game. I'd just be.
You wouldn't be allowed.
Jokes.
You'd be banned.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Of like, seeing that happen to him, like you're never putting a mic on me.
Mahomes comes in at number 9, consistency rate of 11, first half consistency 24, second half, okay, 8. Neither of those are remotely close to drafting him in the 3rd round as the quarterback 3. With all the hopes that he could come back and perform. 13% great games, 25% good. Those numbers added up are not 50%. Not even close. 38% bust games. So
and
by my math, that is an equal number, right? That is 38% bust, 38% great or good.
Yeah,
that's tough, man.
It wasn't a fun ride with Patrick Mahomes this season. If you drafted him, you probably didn't make the playoffs because while he was okay down the stretch, like the second half of the season, he
had a couple games.
He got it together. I don't know if that was Xavier Worthy kind of coming into his own. He started having more big games, more touchdowns down the stretch. Maybe that was very, very helpful. Got Pacheco back for the running game. The defense got a little bit worse down the stretch. All those things come together, but the truth of Patrick Mahomes this year is that if you drafted him, you did not make the playoffs because you had Patrick Mahomes and you had to play him for at least 5, 6, 7 weeks, and he just dudded every single time. His first good game came in week 9. That is, your season's over by then, and it's really hard when you spend a third-round pick on the best quarterback in the NFL to move on quickly.
You know, it wasn't like it was Rashee Rice's injury that disturbed a great fantasy season.
Right.
He was terrible with Rice. Fantasy production-wise, I mean, look at his profile on our site. He has an F in consistency. That means over the last 17 games played, he has exceeded the 20 fantasy point benchmark 23% of the time. I don't want a 1 in 4 chance of 20 points at quarterback.
Very terrifying to me is last year when it was, oh my gosh, what happened to Mahomes? What happened to the Kansas City Chiefs offense? He averaged 17.5 points per game. This year, he averaged 17.6 points per game. He was like his numbers are close to identical. Last year, almost 4,200 yards. This year, 3,900 yards. So I mean, the yardage actually went down. He went down 1 passing touchdown, same touchdown rate, but it's the everything from Mahomes is this who the Chiefs are now next year because they can win the Super Bowl this year. Don't know if they will, but is this who the team is now? Because this is not
the team.
This is not it for fantasy.
Yeah, his yards per attempt is the scariest number for me. It's down to 6.8, the lowest of his career.
He says 1 of 5 quarterbacks this year with more than 20% of their attempts behind the line.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the Chiefs will be whatever they need to be. That is the truth. I think they'll be whatever they need to be to win. Right? That is going to be the number 1, number 2, number 3 goal. It's not, he's had a 5,000-yard passing season, right?
He's had 2 of them.
He's at 5,250 yards. He's at 3,900. Is he a worse quarterback? Probably not. Their personnel's different. There's no more Tyreek Hill, no more 8.3, 8.8 an attempt. His touchdown percentage, 4.5, 4.5 the last 2 years.
His ADP will be fascinating.
That will be a wild one.
Yeah, I mean, if he drops to the 10th, I could take a shot at him, but I will be quick to move on.
And you'll be able to move on.
Exactly. You're not as pot committed where you feel obligated to keep rolling with it. I will say this: if he is in the 6th, 7th round, which is already a drop for him historically, he will not be on my roster.
Right.
Because my expectation is more of the same.
Yeah, or close, and it's got to be way better.
Yeah.
He almost feels like someone where I'm drafting 2 guys.
Yeah.
Like Jordan Love.
It'll be him and Bo Nix. It'll be him and Jordan Love.
Jordan Love's ADP is not going to be very high next year after this disappointment. It's like getting him and Mahomes, 2 guys who you feel like they could be fantastic, but it's going to be interesting to watch.
Number 10, Bo Nix. Bo Nix at number 10. Consistency rank of 11. First half 12. Second half 10. 13% great games, 38% good, and 38% bust games.
I can't move on. I wanted to.
It's not going to be in the audio.
I know. Owl, if there is something you can do because we
it's
filter
not hard.
out.
Just look up. See if you can find a sound effect of if somebody dropped an air conditioner from 1,000 feet and it landed next to
Put the
your ears.
camera on him.
I can make
sure it gets into the audio.
And if it lands next to your
make sure it gets into the audio.
Look how bright red that head is.
This is so what happened. If you're watching YouTube and you saw my face and Andy's face, or if you're hopefully it comes through because we usually filter all that stuff out. But I don't know if it's possible to filter that out.
That's what we heard.
I've never heard a human being.
What was
cough.
that?
That was a cough.
Josh.
Was that a sneeze?
No, that was a
cough?
cough. Papa Josh tried to cough louder than any human has ever coughed in the middle of recording, in the middle of production.
You don't get away with this stuff.
He gets the toilet trophy. The toilet trophy moves to Josh.
Yes.
No, 100%. We make the rules. Papa Josh, you got the toilet trophy. You just in the middle of recording. No, it's not natural. No. Here's what's natural.
You're a toilet person.
I'm going to push my microphone. I'm going to go. No one heard it. No one heard it, and I coughed. What you did was all of us would have had to push our mute buttons at the same time.
We all paused because we were like scared.
I'm trying to keep talking. I don't know what I said.
I couldn't.
It's like a 4x4 crashed into the back wall.
I couldn't cough that loud. If my whole goal, they said you get $1 million if you can cough louder than Josh just did. I wouldn't get $1 million.
Oh man,
that was unbelievable. What happened?
Brooks is like, yo, I heard it on the Zoom.
Brooks heard it. Yeah. Oh, we'll make sure
so tell your story.
Hear
What what did you put into your throat?
When you talk as much as I do, you have very strong lungs.
Okay.
And I coughed, and it came through.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
What a story.
Came through. That's not how people cough.
No, it's not.
Okay. Anyways, what were Bo Nix?
He's got a disease. Bo Nix. Yeah, we're talking about Bo Nix. I mean, look, this was for fantasy purposes.
Your affairs in order, Josh?
Yeah.
Yeah. You might want to check. Make sure that will is
up to date. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about the man's family.
Right. At this point, we need to make doctor's appointments.
There's a new flu, and you have it.
You just made it. You created a new disease with that cough.
Okay, Bo Nix.
Goodness.
Let's call this the teaser season.
Okay.
Because this was not – yes, there were some weeks that we made him a streaming quarterback, and he had games that were certainly worthy of it. But this was not the consistent breakout. I'm going to be a top 10 every year. He's not there yet, but this was a teaser of what's to come. If they add pieces to the offense, if they give him another year with Sean Payton – if you get what you got out of Cortland Sutton and you add another wide receiver or a tight end or a running back and you get more scoring opportunities like 3,729, that's awesome as a rookie. Super. To me, I'm just excited about the potential of a guy like this. You know, you go into next year, are people drafting Bo Nix or C.J. Stroud? Like that's going to be that's going to be the fair combo.
I think it's you go C.J. Stroud. And
is it the sweet unknown of Bo Nix?
No, it's not. It's the fact that Bo Nix is going to give me 400 rushing yards.
Yeah.
And we were excited about Baker's numbers. 400 rushing yards. Yeah, it's not Lamar Jackson. I get it, but it is.
Those are great numbers.
Those are really strong numbers.
Juicy. You love them
for fantasy. From weeks. So week 5 on, week 5 was when Bo Nix had his first good fantasy game, and those first 4 weeks. So he's a rookie quarterback. This isn't Jayden Daniels where you look there's a rookie quarterback who that guy might rush for 800+ yards. I'm very interested in that. So you're not expecting that from Bo Nix, but from week 5 on, he's a 4,000-yard, 36 touchdown pace with the 400 rushing yards. Like those are pretty exciting numbers.
I'm going to be in on Bo. I'm going to be very in on Bo Nix next year because I don't think his ADP is going to go out of control. I don't believe he's going to be a 5th-round pick. If he is, maybe I'll have to make a decision there. But you brought it up a minute ago of like the Bo Nix seems like the type of quarterback you'll just draft 2 of. If he's going to be round 8 or so, I'm totally in.
Yeah,
and I think it's important. Mike's quoting week 5 on. That's totally legitimate. His rookie season started where they weren't letting him throw the ball much. They weren't having him open it up much. And the first 4 weeks of the season were pretty much like his worst stretch of the season. And then as he got more used to the offense and the weapons and all that, he was great, rest of the way. And even if you take out the final week where he was, incredible against Kansas City's backups, he was still on a 4,000-yard, 35 touchdown pace. Those are not numbers rookies do,
unless they're C.J. Stroud, and that would be the counterpoint, right?
Except he didn't run.
What? Sure, but the counterpoint for C.J. Stroud is that, or for Bo Nix, is that look, you can have a season that looks incredible as a rookie.
Yes.
We've seen it recently, and you will get a league that adjusts to you, and so there are growing pains. And sometimes, C.J. Stroud, playoff team. Not a great fantasy year this year. Everybody expected a lot more, drafted him in the 5th round. Bo Nix won't go anywhere. He won't go anywhere near the 5th round, which is great. Like the hype will not be proportionate to Stroud. But, I mean, even Herbert in that first year, on fire. We've had up and down fantasy years. So,
Sure.
So it is it's exciting, but you know the road is going to be windy.
It definitely can be. And my pushback on Stroud would be like he was really, really fun to watch. Like this was an emerging quarterback, the breakout of Nico Collins. But the truth that we talked about of Stroud is he really had 2 fantasy games that entire year. He had a couple where like he almost hit that 21 or mark where he's close, but he had most of his damage was 42 points against Tampa Bay. So I mean, 42 of his 275 points was one game. That was my concern with Stroud. I'm less concerned with Bo Nix.
Touchdowns for fantasy are probably overpowered. Mike complains about it all the time. The touchdowns score too much, but that's the game we play, and so touchdowns really matter. C.J. Stroud, his rookie year, was on pace for 26 touchdowns. If you get rid of that first month, like we did for Bo Nix when he's gotten better, still on pace for 26 touchdowns. This season, through 20 touchdowns. That pace for Bo Nix of 35 passing touchdowns plus rushing yardage, I think the baseline is just higher for Nix.
7 top 10 finishes for Stroud as a rookie, 7 top 10 finishes for Nix as a rookie. So
yeah, but
7 top 12 finishes. So I think they're
the
similar
amount of quarterbacks
seasons.
hurt last year, like the points per game would be a little bit more.
Yeah,
important
that is actually
last
really
year
true.
Was
If you just look at Jared Goff and you look at his fantasy finishes, you're like, oh, he was great 2 years in a row. He wasn't that great last year, even though he was like the quarterback 7. It was just there were a lot of top guys ahead of him that were injured. It kind of pushed those quarterback 12, 13, 14
fantasy points per game, 18.3 fantasy points per game.
Okay.
Does that help?
You.
Does that help? All right, let's move on.
Fantasy Face-Off, presented by DraftKings.
All right, well, week 1, the wild card weekend, our pick 6 competition. No crowns, no clowns is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I mean,
we just split.
We split.
That's the worst.
Yeah, a little bit.
Well,
a little bit. We're gonna do better.
So we all split. McConkey, I got right. Mixon, I got wrong. Jason got Ertz wrong. Jordan Love, both of you guys got that one right. Mm-hmm. And then Mike with Bucky, more than 86.5 rushing yards.
I thought we were gonna get
you
there.
You were very close. Josh still alive?
Yeah, he's
Don't try talking.
Yeah, you might cough.
Also, go to a hospital. All right. Divisional round picks. I'm gonna go. My two picks. Josh Allen, more than 239.5 passing yards. He's averaged 272 in the playoffs. I like. They're gonna need to lean on him this week. And then Devontae Smith, I'm going to go my second pick, more than 54.5 receiving yards.
Okay.
I thought about going to A.J. Brown, but I just feel like when we've had situations this year where big plays need to get made, it's gone to Devontae Smith in a lot of these games. He's been more than that number in 8 of 13 regular season games.
A.J. Brown's still dealing with his knee injury. I mean, it's clearly limiting him.
He's got inner excellence, no outer excellence.
Right.
So I will go those 2 picks.
I'm going to go with a low one here. Kareem Hunt, just more than 6.5 receiving yards. That's the line. Look, he's done that more than in 7 of 12 games.
That's an interesting one.
And one of the games that he did that recently was with Isaiah Pacheco, and it was against the Texans. Guess who they're playing? So I think that they will involve him in the passing game. And that's a very easy amount of receiving yards to cover. And I'm going to take Jayden Daniels, the rookie sensation. I'm going to go with more than 53.5 rushing yards. That's a very, very high line.
It does feel high.
It does. However,
I almost went with his passing yards, by the way.
And I did as well. So I don't know if you guys are aware, Detroit's team implied total this week is the highest of the entire season. 53.5 points, something like that. They are going to put up a ton of points, and Jayden Daniels is going to need to be involved and catch up and keep scoring. And the nice thing is Detroit allows the 4th most quarterback rushing yards this season. So it's like this perfect matchup where I think he will have to use his legs against the Detroit Lions.
So also, if you don't know what game we're talking about, we're playing DraftKings Pick 6, which it's a great game because it's you against numbers. There's
it's just more or less.
There's stat lines out there, and you pick a handful of players, and you say, are they going to be more or less than the numbers given to you? It's a really, really fun game. Excited to be playing it over the playoffs here. I have a Jayden Daniels one in mind as well. I'm taking the over on 1.5 passing touchdowns. Yep. Kyle just shared it for us. Jay, the Detroit's implied team total is 32.5. The game is at 55.5. 55! Absolutely outrageous number there to hit 55 points. Jayden Daniels, all I need is 2 passing touchdowns. And then I'm going Isaiah Pacheco, less than 43.5 rushing yards. He looked like a guy who came back way too quick from the injury, gets hurt again. Thankfully they had the bye week, because the way that Andy Reid was talking about Pacheco going into the playoffs is like, I think we're going to be good here. So I don't like him in this game. He came back. He's averaging 3.7 yards per carry since coming back from the injury. So I'm not expecting a huge game from him.
All right, that was Fantasy Faceoff presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. DraftKings Sportsbook is crowning a king of the end zone every NFL game day. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code BALLERS. That's the code BALLERS to compete for a share of $2 million in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings, the crown is yours. On Tuesday, next week, the Quarterback Truth episode part 2, and we'll be getting into the other position groupings over the course of the rest of the week.
Will Papa Josh be here? Stay tuned.
We do have a live image of what it looked like, I think. Oh, there it is.
Oh, there we go. Yes,
just
very nice.
Breaking the glass
shattering
into
his
1,000 pieces.
Like the big bad wolf.
I didn't even mention it, but my laptop shut down when he coughed.
Yeah. No, the screen
it's like
broke.
an EMP.
Mm-hmm.
It was. So, all right, that'll do it. A reminder, if you're interested in that position, the graphic design job, go to thefantasyfootballers.com/careers. Learn more about another position we're hiring for. We'll catch you later, Foot Clan.
Goodbye.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. 1 token per customer. Tokens expire at the start of the final of NFL game each day when offered. Use token on day's longest touchdown scorer to receive equal share of $2 million in non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 168 hours. Additional wagering restrictions apply. For additional terms or responsible gaming resources, see sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos.